Good evening, folks. Welcome once again to Facebook Live with Red Fez. Real apologies for the lateness. As soon as we went to go live, the camera switched off. So what about that, eh? So we talk a lot about IT frustrations. We've certainly had some this evening. It's not actually the webcam. It appears to be the software that we're using. Suddenly decided they didn't want to talk to the webcam anymore. So there we were. We had the build-up. We were ready to go. And then the whole thing just fell apart at the last minute. But anyway, we are here now and we're all cool, calm and collected, and we have actually got quite a packed program this evening because we've got quite a number of questions that people have asked us this week, so we will be looking at those. As usual, we normally wait just a minute or so while people get online, so please do share this, invite people in. Let's get as many people as we can watching this, and that all helps to make it that little bit more worthwhile. So just while you're doing that, I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we've got, and then we'll actually go through them. So the first question we're going to be looking at is, why do updates break my computer? We talked a little bit about updates breaking computers a couple of weeks ago, and we'll ask that question about why that might actually happen. And what's the most important thing I can do to protect my computer or system from a cyber attack? Okay, so that's the one thing. If I was to do one thing, what would that thing be? We'll have a look at that. And we will ask the question, when I buy a new computer, why can't I just take the old hard drive out and put the new one in and it magically work? Because that would be kind of great if it would do that, wouldn't it? Why does that not happen? Plus, we also have an anonymous question who has asked, what's your favourite piece of office equipment, or your piece of equipment that you cannot do without? So actually, let's start with that one. How about that? So what's my one piece of equipment that I cannot do without? Now, if I was being prepared, I probably could have picked it up for you and showed you, but I think that my most favourite piece of equipment, and it's not really office equipment, it's technical equipment, is the machine I use for cleaning out computers. It's like a reverse vacuum cleaner, if you like. It's a blower thing. Okay, I mean, that thing is mighty. Okay, that will, whatever you got on the table when you set that going, it will blow it off the table. It's pretty good. We used to use canned air and stuff, which is okay, but it doesn't last very long, and there's always a little bit of moisture, and I never like really the fact that you've got the accelerants in there that might be potentially spraying moisture onto sensitive electrical components. So actually, this big blower machine is much better at cleaning things out, and it really does work. And I tell you, we have seen some really filthy computers. If you are in a household where you smoke and you've got a computer, I can tell you the inside of that is going to be pretty minging. Seriously will, because tobacco can really be a real problem. Tobacco and tar and all the dust sticks, and it's pretty yucky. So if you are in a house where you smoke, you probably do need to get your computer serviced pretty regularly, because they will get clogged up in any environment where there's a bit of smoke or a bit of dirt or anything like that. And some of our business clients who are garages, they can have that problem, lots of oil and stuff like that in the air. So you've really got to keep on top of things. And I'm always amazed sometimes at how these computers can keep going given what they have to put up with. Anyway, so that's my favourite piece of equipment. It's the one thing I really couldn't do without. I can probably go and get another pen if my pen runs out, or another calculator or whatever. We've got computers galore, but that blowy machine, that's what I'm going to call it, is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so why do updates break my computer? Well, it does happen on occasion. You get an update and things go a little bit wrong. And last week we did have a computer in where an update had come in and it corrupted the user profile. That does happen sometimes. It locks you out of your profile. You can't get in at all. It creates a temporary profile, which is okay, but you can't access your documents and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty nigh on useless. And it's not just necessarily a problem with Windows machines. Sometimes it happens with Macs too, but it's mostly what we would assume with Windows machines. And that's what I'm going to look at, because the answer really relates to those. Now, if you think about it, if you're trying to update something like Windows that is on millions of computers, all of which have a very different combination of hardware on them, that's all got to magically work together, it's actually quite a technical feat of engineering to get it to work, and I think I might have alluded to this a couple of weeks ago. It's been easy for Apple to do these things because there's only certain combinations of hardware that they use. So they can write for that and they can test it on those combinations of hardware. It's perhaps not quite as locked down as it used to be, so you can still sometimes have issues. But Windows has always been a platform for the enthusiast who can buy any hardware that they want and put it together and make a computer and install Windows on it. And unfortunately, sometimes things aren't going to work on every bit of combination, no matter how well it's tested. So that's reason number one why Windows can break your computer. Most of the time, as I said, it doesn't. Most of the time they go through fine, but sometimes it can do that. That'd be reason one. Reason two could be that there is just something that the developers have missed in testing. Probably those instances where files have been deleted and stuff like that, they may well have overlooked something or missed something. With the best will in the world, I know that there are lots of people involved in these things, but there's always lots of plates spinning, lots of balls in the air, lots of juggling going on, and I'm sure that some of my programmer friends will probably be able to explain that better and will certainly relate to that kind of situation. But it's quite amazing, actually, as I've said before, how it actually all does work, considering. So that's why it happens. It's one of those things that you've just got to kind of bite the bullet sometimes. Just make sure you've got everything backed up. If you've got everything backed up, if your system does fall over, then at least you can restore things upon the back. I know it's a bit of a pain, but that is actually better than working on an unsecured system, somebody hacking in, breaking into it, encrypting all your files, stealing documents, or just messing things up, or stealing your identity, pretending to be you. You don't want that. So we may cope with a bit of grief sometimes with a system that doesn't quite work after an update. So there we go. Which brings us neatly, I think, on to the next question, which is what's the most important thing I can do to protect my computer from a cyber attack? The one most important thing. Now, you might think my answer is going to be antivirus. And that's a very good thing to do. Well, that wouldn't be my answer, partly because Windows 10 comes with one, so you really don't have to think about it much these days. And antivirus just protects you against viruses. And that's not really the biggest threat to your computer or to your organization or to your network or to your systems. The biggest threat is people who are hacking into your systems. And they do that mainly by compromised passwords. That thing that you have to remember to get into your system, somebody finds that out and they get in. Compromised passwords are the biggest weakness, and they are the cause of the vast majority of breaches in systems. So you've got to look at ways of managing that and making sure that is locked down. Oh, I'm going on about passwords again, aren't I? I must have done that several times now. As I said, I'll keep going on about it until we kind of all get much more disciplined with this. So I said there's two things: password managers and, more importantly, multi-factor authentication. So that would be my thing now, is to get multi-factor authentication enabled on everything that you can, really, because that provides a very good level of protection. It is not 100%, nothing is 100%, but we're talking probably 99.9% as opposed to passwords which are nowhere near that as effective. As I've said, Google enabled MFA across their organisation and haven't really seen any breaches as a result of phishing attacks. Now, as I've said before, phishing is one of those things where people are going to try and get your password out of you. They will trick you into revealing it, and that is something that, with vigilance, you can probably avoid most of the time, but if you're caught off guard, so it can happen to the best of us, and has happened to the best of us. I just had, again, another story. Every week I'm coming across stories of people who have clicked on something or responded to something that they shouldn't have. So I got a call today from somebody who'd been sent an email. They clicked on it, opened it up. That person then contacted them and said, don't click on that email because I've been hacked. Unfortunately, it was too late. They'd already done that. And they have basically, all their documents off their computer have gone, and they can't get into their iCloud backup. They've been locked out of it. So that's a problem, you see. So this is where multi-factor authentication is really important. In that instance, the hacker could not have got into that person's iCloud account if they've got MFA on it, because they didn't have that second device, that second thing, or that second piece of information that was needed to get in. So I'm going to keep going on about that because it really, really is important. Lots of websites, lots of software basically gives you the opportunity to do multi-factor authentication, so do it. And they'll often allow you to use something like Google Authenticator, so you don't need several apps on your device that are handling multi-factor authentication. Just one will do it. Okay, you might have to use a couple, or you might just set it up so it sends a number to your phone or something like that. Whatever works for you, doesn't really matter. Just do it. Okay, so next question is, what about a new computer? Why can't I just take the hard drive out of the old one and stick it in the new computer? Good question. It'd be great if you could do that. And it's all to do with the way your computer works, because what you see isn't really much of what's actually going on. There's a lot going on in your computer. There is a lot to Windows that you do not see. Computers are marvels of engineering, really, as I've said before. You know, at the end of the day, you've got your software, so you've got your programs that you run, you've got your operating system, and you've got your hardware, so the actual physical things that you can touch and feel in your computer. You know, the motherboard, and the graphics card, and all that kind of stuff. And the software has got to talk to the hardware. So there are lots of different layers within the software that all kind of have to talk to each other, and things kind of pass between those layers. Things have to be put in the right order. But the main reason is, and it comes back to what I said earlier, is when you're buying a computer, it could be very different to the next person's computer and very different to the next person's computer. And that hardware speaks a certain language, and Windows needs to be able to speak to that particular piece of hardware, and it does that with things called drivers. You may have heard about that. Software drivers. They're the things that allow your software to talk to your hardware, and the drivers on your computer are different to the drivers on somebody else's computer. Now, if somebody else has got exactly the same specification, then you might get away with it by transferring one from the other, but then again you might not. But it's very rare that happens. When you're upgrading, each by nature can be very different. So when you put the disk in, it knows how to talk to the hardware from the old computer, but doesn't know how to talk to the hardware on the new computer, so it just fails. It does not work at all. Plus, things have got to be in the right places on the disk. You know, Windows have got to know where to find things. So you have to. This is where you have to install things rather than just copy them across. Things have to happen. Things have to be put in the right places. So it's like that with a program. Sometimes you can transfer it from one computer to another. Sometimes you can get away with picking up the exe file and moving it across to another computer, and it works if it's a simple program. Other programs are more complex, and they'll have bits dotted all over the computer. You know, not just an exe file. They might have something in the registry that they've done. They might have something in the app data folder. They might have, it's all over the place. So it's actually very, very complex. So I guess that's the reason why. Because it's so complex, you can't just do that. Each computer is different in its complexity, and you can't, unfortunately, just pick something up and move it to the other one. It'd be nice if we could, but we can't. So, comment coming in on here about sorts of things that can clog up your computer. So not just if you're a smoker. Pet fur can clog up. Fans also absolutely can. Although that combined with the tar from smoking can be pretty messy, because that gives the fur something to stick to. And I've heard beard hair can too. Well, I guess your pet fur can, I suppose beard fur can. I wouldn't want to be leaning over my computer with the fan spinning with beard or long hair. That could be pretty painful. I know a fan got my hand the other day, actually. I got a bit too close to it. They can be pretty nasty when they're spinning. You've got to be very, very careful. So, anyway, that is it for this evening. And there were the 4 questions that we had. So thanks very much for watching. We will be back next week, hopefully without the camera issues. Let's hope we can get this software working reliably and properly. So you take care. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much.